We'll get it by link. All right, so let me welcome you this morning. I'm Keith Mathis, and we're going to be studying today the leading and managing virtual teams. And so the little subheading I gave it was driving the paradigm of change to employee productivity. In the last 2 years, you have had an opportunity to be part of virtual teams just because of the sheer nature of the pandemic. And so what it has done is that has pushed everyone over to the point where all of us have had to become accustomed to the virtual teams. So I wanted to go through, I've got a lot of slides, and I'm going to go real quick to get these through in our hour. But one of the things that has happened to us is that some people run great virtual teams and some not so great. Many of you are probably experts in it by now, as I'm sure you are. And I've seen some great techniques. But I wanted to talk about virtual teams because here's what I think is happening, and you might disagree with me, but I think that virtual teams are probably here to stay. I think our Generation X and millennials are much more accustomed and comfortable with the virtual and the technology than maybe we were as baby boomers. And so we still have baby boomers in the workplace, but within the next 3 years, most of those baby boomers are going to kind of filter out if they're not already. And then I think what you're going to see is that we're still going to see some virtual. Many of your companies, I think, are still going to let you work some virtual. If not, it might be a hybrid kind of deal. I'm going to be leaving as soon as I finish with you this morning. I'm taking the first trip to do my first face-to-face since March of 2020. Now think about this. March of 2020, you guys who are from the state of Missouri, I was speaking at your location when the pandemic and all the closures stopped. And so March of 2020, I was with you. You were my last place to speak. And then we have done virtual since March of 2020. And so today I'm leaving for Philly. I'm going to spend 2 days with a new customer out there that wants me face to face. And now they have just changed it to where I'm going to have a class, but I'm also going to have people virtual. So I'm doing a hybrid class, which is something I've done several times before, even before the pandemic. But that just shows you how we want that versatility even more. So I'm going to be teaching face-to-face and people tapped in virtually. So today we're going to talk about leading and managing some of these virtual teams. Now, I don't think this is a definition you guys need, but just in case anyone else is watching this, virtual teams have participants from any place in the world. They're not bound by geography. They also use some type of technology to communicate. So I use Zoom, as you guys see. Many of you are using Teams, you're using other stuff, WebEx or something else. We do all of that with our universities. And so they include both subject matter experts as well as other team members who are working together on projects and having meetings. It could be a vendor who's updating the team on what's happening as their team finishes up or finishes up another component of the project. Now, what we've noticed is that the atmosphere of a virtual team is a little different than what a normal face-to-face team might be. Virtual teams can include multiple cultures due to the authority or the span of control by the manager or the project manager or even the team. They also could have a manager structure allowing the authority to remain at that manager level. Now, many of you, I've been on meetings with many of you virtually, and many of you have a very relaxed atmosphere, not only for yourself, but for your team. Anybody can pretty well talk and share anything they need at any time. And most managers and project managers have kind of gone to that because you want people to talk. So the team are workers who support or complete the work determined by the manager or by the project manager. But there are some who the manager may becomes as more of a dictatorial kind of person, more of an authority figure, and they're there to pass information out, but not so much gather information. Now, I don't like that. You probably don't either. And there's probably there's a right time to do it and a wrong time to do it as well. But that is one of the dynamics that's there. Now, virtual teams that keep authority at the project manager level and have a similar culture to the manager, one person might be making more of the decisions in the team, and the decisions for completing work or who's going to be assigned work might come from one person. And like we say, all those cultures have had to adjust to the virtual team setting to some extent. You probably have seen a softening of some of the formalities when you went to a virtual team, just because of the sheer nature. First off, what we wear. Most people are wearing, oh, you make sure you got a nice shirt on, but you're only seeing me halfway up. Now I've got jeans and the whole thing on, so I'm not in pajamas, okay? But you know what I'm talking about. All of us have been concerned on what do we look like from the waist up, because that's what people are seeing. And of course, we've all heard the jokes of people, and even the Folgers commercial where the guy's in his boxer shorts, but he's got the suit on the top, on the top part. But the point of all of this is that we have relaxed a little bit, I think, with some of these. Now, virtual teams that place the authority at the team level experience a different type of culture. And the reason is because I'm not just there getting information from someone who has authority. I'm also working with my team to try to decide what is the best way to do this. What's the best way? What kind of decision do we need to make? And so the team takes on a lot more of that responsibility. I've been blessed to see some phenomenal teams communicate with a lot of these. Now let's talk about the communication itself. Many people struggle with communications, and it's not face-to-face, obviously, but you can communicate very well in a virtual setting. So let's look at communications in the virtual team. So when we look at virtual team interactions, it is different. And so we've got 3 different levels of this. One is the entire team communicating like you do probably on a daily basis as we went through the pandemic. Some of you maybe are doing one-on-one, and so you might be working one-on-one with a team member, or one-on-one for problem-solving purposes. And then some of you might be working in a specialty group. And so it might be all your programmers having a meeting, and so they're working out something, or it might be another group, all your hardware people are trying to work out a problem. And so the point is we have a lot of different things that we can pull together for virtual interactions. And so like for an example, for the entire team, the whole team is meeting and we're updating everybody about everything. One-on-one, it might be a supervisor or a project manager working with one team member trying to work with them in a one-on-one capacity to get those skills up. Or it could be a specialty for a SMEs who are pulling together, working on something for that purpose. And so that would be very, very helpful in those areas there. But when we talk about communication, stakeholders are all accountable to communicate. So I can't be so frustrated with communication because if I'm not saying something or letting people know that I don't know what we're supposed to do, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So we have to communicate clearly and often. We have to check on the understanding of the message that's being sent, and we have to use that active listening. And active listening and feedback allows us to be able to ask questions, allows us to be able to verify, especially in this setting, what it is you want me to do, and then summarize those decisions. Now, during this pandemic, one of the things I've just recently started with my doctoral students, I have 8 doctoral students, and I'm their doctoral chair, is I discovered with some of my students that I'm giving it to them in email or in giving them feedback on their dissertation in email or in a box that that's posted to their system. And I found out that what I thought was so clear was not real clear when I used email. And so they weren't real sure what the next step was or what they were supposed to do. And so after I found that out, I still do the narrative in the box or in email, because I send it to them both ways. But now I do a checklist. And so now on the checklist, I'll say, read the sidebar of your dissertation and make it the adjustments as needed. Next checklist point. And so I give them up 3 to 5 different things on a checklist of what they're supposed to do. And then, and now what's happening is I'm getting notes back from some of these students saying, okay, I did this, this, and this, but I'm not sure about this. And so I'm able to give additional feedback to them. But the point is that no one knows that they're not communicating to you unless we are saying it, unless we're saying, hey, time out. I don't understand what the next step is. I don't understand what decision we've made. So communication in virtual team comes from a lot of different ways. And I saw this graphic and I like it from Communication Research Associates when they were talking about noise. And in any kind of communication model, there is what we call noise, where people communicate, but anytime there's static or noise, there's going to be something that distorts that message. We have it in our relationships with our family. We have it in our relationships on the job. And so you'll notice that they've got the message, the channel, the receiver, and the source, and there's noise in the middle. That noise could actually be a real noise, or it could be a misunderstanding or a lack of a knowledge of what you're talking about that I know, especially if we're talking to a subject matter expert. And so the thing is that we have to learn how to be able to soften or to get rid of the noise, whatever it is that's keeping us from being able to communicate. So if you look at it from the message standpoint, nonverbal and verbal language, meanings and ideas. Now, can you get that even virtually? Of course you can. What's funny is when people have their cameras on, and we ask when we're doing training, and many of you have been in training with me, that when you speak or you give a report from your team, that you would also turn your camera on. Well, of course, our cameras come off and on, and we've all seen a lot of goofy stuff with our cameras, but you'll see people roll their eyes and stuff on the video, which is hilarious because that's what we see sitting around the table face to face a lot of times. When we talk about the channel can include a lot of things: touching, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting. And of course, if we're doing this virtually, then a lot of times what we're doing really is seeing and hearing more so than anything else, because I'm not really touching anything, I'm not really smelling anything or tasting anything, but I can see and hear you. And at least if I can see the expressions and see your body language, I can understand what you're doing. And then as a receiver, you're looking at self-concept, listening ability, perceptual ability, education roles, values, cultures, attitudes. All of these can make a difference on whether I'm receiving you well or not so well. If I'm having a bad morning, a bad attitude, I got a bad attitude, or you've had an argument with your spouse, or you've had a little fender bender on the way to work, you're probably not in the best situation to be able to receive a lot of information because you're preoccupied with a lot of other things. And then the last one is the source: the education, the roles, self-concept, listening abilities, perceptual abilities, values, cultures, attitudes. These fall into source. So receiver and source have a lot of these that fit together, and they're very similar here. So let's go one step further. Let's talk about decision making in virtual teams. Can this tool be used in that way? And the answer is obviously yes. Decision-making at a virtual team level requires several things. Clear definition of what the problem is. This is always an issue for us, is to find what the real problem is, not just on virtually, but face-to-face. We sometimes look at the surface level things and not at the root cause. And the root cause of that problem is going to have to be the bigger piece. Competency of the team for analysis. New people, they have more problems, more trouble trying to identify the problem because they're newer. Not bad people, just newer. Timeliness in solving or picking a solution, decision or problem solving process. Many don't understand the process. And then also facilitation of the team throughout the entire process. A lot of times these are some struggles with people. They don't feel comfortable asking someone, saying, Barbara, what did you think about that? I haven't heard anything from you. And you got to do it in a nice way, but some people don't feel comfortable with that. And then also discussing, how do we measure success? Just the resolution of that problem, or was the purpose behind this to fix the problem so that something else could happen? All of those could be something that we're measuring, that we're looking toward, that would tell us that the team is working well together and we're having success. And so all of those would have to be something discussed. So team decision making in virtual team includes a lot of things. Team decisions sometimes fall apart because of the time it takes to gain consensus. But it took us time to gain consensus even when we were face to face. And so we struggled with a lot of these. Team decisions must be timely, support the team, demonstrate quality, be based on some type of analysis rather than gut feeling, and move in the direction of the goal and the vision. And so if we're running a project, the goal and the vision is going to be to deliver another iteration or sprint, or to deliver another phase, or get a deliverable coming out of that project. It's not just to go through the motions, it's to have some kind of productivity coming out of it. And so all of these have to be here. The timeliness is something that we have to watch, because we want to be able to respond quickly. Now, one of the things that has been so cool, I thought, and maybe you saw this too, is many of the reports coming back on all of this says that people are actually have a higher productivity working from home than they did on the job. And the second thing I thought was interesting is that people are actually responding faster working from home than they did on the job. Well, both of those make the whole dynamics of everything good, because you're solving the problem faster, which means productivity is going to happen faster because we know what we're doing. We fix the problem. So that's an excellent way to be able to expand these capabilities that we're talking about. Now, Communication Research Associates did something on barriers, and I thought it was excellent. So barriers to decision-making in a virtual setting. The first, and obviously the most common, is lack of training. If you switch between systems, you probably have noticed it's a little clumsy. When I'm using Teams, Teams are a little different than WebEx. It's a little different than Zoom. And then Adobe Connect, I do something for some stuff for American Management Association. They use Adobe Connect. All of these have some strengths, and all of these have weaknesses, and all of them, well, if you're switching between them, feel a little clumsy at times. But so the first is going to be lack of training or support. Second barrier is going to be fear of risk. Many of your teams there's a fear of risk of making a decision and not be sitting in the room with the project manager or manager, or they fear of risk of what's going to happen if I'm wrong. Bad past experiences, belief that decisions are irreversible, replaying disaster outcomes in one's mind, no decision-making process for the team. A lot of these barriers cause us to be paralyzed, and you probably have noticed it with some people. They get paralyzed. They want to make a decision, but nobody wants to fail, and nobody wants to fail being at home. And that isolation intensifies it in a lot of cases with some folks. Now, let's talk about some advantages and disadvantages of virtual teams. So the first piece is onboarding new members to the virtual team. You're going to have people join your new team, join your virtual team who are new. And so let's focus on a couple of ideas here. First off, team members change and leaders are added or removed to existing teams all the time. However, you have to understand that that's going to change the dynamics of that team. And so many of you have participated in training, and you've seen forming, storming, norming, and performing. And so you've seen that theory that's out there. Well, that works even in the virtual setting, because as you change team members or change leaders and new people come in, it changes the culture of that group, which causes us many times to have to kind of go through those same steps again. So when new members become part of a team, the team must reform. We have to reform and kind of rebond with that group. So reforming may cause a temporary slowdown in productivity, but it's very necessary to make that person feel part of the group. So unless this happens, the new team member always feels like they're an outsider, and that's what you don't want to do. You want to be able to bring them in. And it would be even easier to make someone feel like an outsider in the virtual setting because they've not attended all the other meetings that everyone else has gone through. Now, here's some of the advantages of the virtual team. Experts can live anywhere in the world and can connect to the job site. And this is happening right now. You're seeing it. You're participating in it like crazy. No longer is there a corporate building required, a desk or an organizational space for the worker, because people are doing it from home. And overall happiness of the worker is higher because of the freedom and flexibility. Now, let me give you an example. Many of you have had a lot of international experience in different things. One of the things that's happened just this past week is I've been recruited by the company Knowledge Hut to do some project management training for them. And they're based out of India. And of course, you know, silly me, I went through all the negotiation and stuff, but there's that side of me of risk and fear that somebody is, that this is all kind of a scam. So I'm just being transparent here. And so I did the whole negotiation with these two guys, super nice. They offered me the position. And so I verbally tell them I'm willing to work with their company part-time to do a little bit of stuff that they're wanting me to do. And then when I get off the phone, I turn around and I get on the web and I look up, you know, the headquarters in India. And so I send an email to their human resource department. And I say, here's who I am. Here's the people I've been talking to. And they've offered me a position. And, you know, are these people real? And you know, so are they real people? And so the next day I get a wonderful email back from the HR director saying, yes, thank you for checking on that. They are real people. If they've offered you a position, that's excellent. And so they have the authority to do that. And then there's a little voice inside of me. I'll finish the thought. There's a little voice inside of me thinking, I wonder if the HR director was in on this. You know, I mean, and I know now it's not, but we're so skeptical when you're talking about worldwide. So anyway, that's just my transparency. Sorry, guys. So anyway, my point is that there's some advantages. You can be anywhere in the world. Now, what's the disadvantage? Well, communication breakdown. I can't just walk down the hall and talk to you and clear something up. Even though virtual is better than a telephone call, I still can't do that. Incompetent team members who does not follow through or complete assigned work, that can be a disadvantage. Now, we're going to talk about that a little bit and give you some suggestions of what you could do with that, even in a virtual setting. Also, dispersed management of workers can make it harder to determine one's productivity. What is enough productivity for me for you to think I'm a good worker? What is it? You know, is that a realistic level that you're thinking, or is it an unrealistic level? Now, we have had and seen both in some of the settings where some people thought that the workers should be producing even more than they really were, and then some thought that they were producing a lot more than what they normally did. All right, so why are workers attracted to the virtual world? And I don't think this is going to change. And of course, I don't know where everybody is. I know you're tapping in from all over the country, and some of you are out of the country tapping in. But I will tell you that here in the United States, we have a worker shortage everywhere. And so I bet it's the same way where you are here in the US too. There's signs, everybody's trying to hire for everything. And there's hundreds of thousands of workers needed in every state. And so but one of the things that has come out is some of the sociologists have come out and said that people have reevaluated their values. And I think there's maybe some truth to this, that many of your millennials and Gen Xers who have kids have looked at it and thought that they rather work from home to where they have the flexibility to be able to do family stuff. And so some husbands are working from home because it works better for them, and some wives are working from home in that situation. But it really goes down to our first bullet point here: quality of life. Quality of life and time with children or non-school age children, no daily commute to a job site. Also, you're looking at managing one's schedule and working with a culturally diverse work group. A lot of reasons why people have decided to work from home. But one of the big things that I think that comes to my mind, and so I'm an old guy and I don't have kids that are little. I've got grandkids. That always baffles me is when these school districts, is what we've heard so much, have had to send the kids home and they've had to stay home, for 10 days. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what are these poor parents doing to be able to take care of those kids? Because I'm thinking about grammar, grammar school and elementary school in that age, because kids are being sent home. And here parents, literally within a day, you're home 10 days with that child. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what are they doing with all of this? It's just, it's just so fast. And I guess I'm thinking of how hard it is to get babysitters. If your kids are in school, you don't have a babysitter probably. But anyway, that's just a huge thing that's gone through my mind. Now let's go to talking a little more about the performance and effectiveness of the team, measuring effectiveness and efficiency of the virtual team. Now, effectiveness is the value one brings to the organization based on what is produced or the number of outputs. Whatever it is you were hired to do, they're expecting you to have an output of some type of work. So to make it easier, I just said number of products or number of reports. There's something you're supposed to be producing, okay? So the point is that virtual teams have become very good at being effective, producing that output, producing that product or that report, even though they happen to be at home. The efficiency side is the speed, time, or resource consumption. Quickness in producing the products, less consumption of resources because you're at home, you're not on the job. And so what's happened with efficiency is that you've actually seen people who are working, but many of the people are actually working other hours. They get up in the middle of the night, they don't, not being able to sleep. So they come in, they work a little bit and they kind of get ahead. And of course, we've all done that all of our work lives in most cases too, but it's the continuity and the easiness of being able to walk into your office and sit down and everything's here makes it even easier to be able to do some of these things. So when you're working with that virtual team, there's those goals that we have to be able to connect with. The first is going to be communicating freely with the people, engaging with someone from a distance, and then consistent productivity. How can we consistently produce and have an output that the company is going to want and our supervisor is going to be pleased with, and that so that we're doing due diligence as an employee. Now, there's some common foundations that will help us with those virtual teams to be able to support this, engaging with each other. Now, we're going to talk about this more one-on-one than just the team, but the point is we've got to engage with each other, do their portion of work. Team supports each other. Check one's ego. All of these are a little bit easier to do when we're doing it virtually. Interviewing someone who is very high in their position, a lot of times is much easier virtually for them to check their ego than maybe sitting in a meeting face to face. But many of our meetings, and especially if we're wanting our teams to take more responsibility, many of our teams, the ego has to be checked, because if not, then everybody's going to let the highest ranking person call all the shots. And not that they don't need to make decisions, they do, of course, but many times we want those teams to be able to be engaged in what we're talking about. So let's look at the role of influence in that virtual team, because we're being influenced by someone and we want that influence to be a positive, wholesome kind of thing. So influence is really a power-based action to influence people, actions, and events. And so that's the reason why the egos have to be checked sometimes. And maybe that's you, but you know what I'm talking about. If you come in and you don't check your power and your ego, then what's going to happen is you're going to basically talk the whole time and make every decision, and nobody's going to make any recommendations. Nobody's even going to give a different point of view. Influence is a competency desired by organizations so people can persuade others significantly. And so one of the things that we have to know is that regardless of our power level, in the organization, we don't have total knowledge. None of us do. We don't have total knowledge of this stuff. And so we have an opportunity to talk with people and for them to shape our knowledge and shape our decision, because they are in the weeds with it. And even though we might have the power, they're the person who really might be more knowledgeable about that, and they can make those decisions. Influence can come from strict authoritarian power. We've had that. That was old style management years ago within a company, or solely from a relationship oriented type of institution and interactions. And so that's where everything's going more today, with teams, with relationship. All of your new formats for organizations, they're going to some form of team and project atmosphere so that people can interact. So the goal of influence in the virtual team would be it creates leverage in gaining support or change the decision a person, team, or organization makes. It changes the mindset or opinions of others from one purpose to another because you're allowing them to shape that decision. It expands because of the person's credibility and trustworthiness. I mean, they're in the weeds. They work on this all the time. I'm going to trust them. And it establishes a clear partnership between all parties involved in the project or action. And that partnership can be built in a virtual setting, even though we don't see each other. Now, obviously, if we saw each other, we would build a different type of culture. But seeing each other virtually, we still can build that type of culture here. So let's talk about that trust and influence a little bit more. So virtual teams must overcome suspicions on trust. And the piece on trust that we're talking about is the ability of, okay, are people doing their jobs like they're supposed to do? Are they at home watching Ellen all day? You know what I'm saying? And so there's that old management style, that Theory X management style that thinks, man, my people will do nothing unless I'm riding them and watching them day by day. And so I don't like virtual because I want them at the office so I can see them. That's a very old style, but it is a legitimate style in some cases. So trust building, you've got high functioning members, do what they say, seek help fast, they follow up often. This builds trust because I know that if you don't know, you're asking. If you're confused, you're coming in to talk to somebody. So that's going to build that trust. And that's obviously what we have to have. But trust reducing things will sometimes happen. So if people are missing deadlines, time to return a phone call takes forever, lack of passion for the job, little or no engagement on the job, then there's that the trust starts going down, that trust that you have for that person. So virtual teams have to be able to build trust and not reduce trust in order to keep these things moving in the direction we want. So with trusting team members to do their best on the team, that means that I anticipate that I've got good people. I anticipate they're going to do the best they can. So actions that create a lack of trust would be those who have their own agenda, and we've all seen people like that. Team members competing with each other rather than complementing the actions. Also, little or no interest in building up the team. It's all about them. You know, it's that unholy trinity that we've all seen. Me, myself, and I. Aren't I great? You know, can I not pat myself on the back even further? And then the last one would be acting in a way to get ahead of at another person's expense. We can't have those kind of things because we want to be part of the team. I want to support you as a team member. I want to make you right. Even when you maybe are wrong, can I help make you right? Those kind of philosophies support this virtual team environment that we have. So trust is not something where somebody comes in and just lays the law down and says, okay, everybody, you got to trust me. Trust is not earned. Trust is earned, not demanded. You can't demand trust. It happens over time. Don't you have a best friend that you trust with your secrets? You trust with everything about it. You'd give them your wallet with any of your money, or if you're like me, we have no money. My wife has Wanda has all the money, and so the point is you trust them with everything because why? You know that they have proven themselves over and over again. Well, that's exactly what we can do with a virtual team. So actions that create trust in a team, building up the team rather than the individual. It's not all about me. It's about us. It's not about me. It's about us. Also, team members who want to support rather than compete. So in other words, that competition, and when, a lot of times when that competition is there, we're trying to show off a little bit. And so we don't need that in a team. We really do need to be complementary, because what's going to happen is that we're going to be stronger together than we are individually. Focus on making all struggling team members receive help and work with them so that they are not looking like the person who's the oddball because they can't produce. Team members function in unity as one rather than as an individual over here. And then motivation comes from all individuals. Everybody's an encourager. Everybody is talking about this. I mean, we've all had those times where we're working on something that is not easy, and so we feel clumsy or dumb or because we can't get it together. Now let's talk about performance and identity in that virtual team. So causes of poor performance in a virtual team. So team members think that they know the level of expected performance, but that level of performance is off. So I think it's here, but you're really thinking it's here. Now, it might be unrealistic to think it's here. And I think during the pandemic, you saw some people who thought the performance should be a lot higher than maybe it should be. And then I think sometimes people thought it would be less. But overall, I think some of that has worked its way out. Team members hold back skills or knowledge other team members need. We saw this in previous generations. Today, Gen X and millennials are very open to sharing their knowledge and their expertise, but we really kind of have to make that format in our mind that we want to share with someone else. That just because I know, I need to ask, would you like to know this or see how to do this? And we've got to be able to soften that idea that that somebody's going to get my job or something like that. Team members purposely limit the information and communication to certain team members. Could be that I don't like them. Could be that we don't think that they're really that committed. So we hold back information. Our team members turnover is frequent and rapid. And so what happens is that hurts our performance. Every organization has some turnover. You know how that is. But the point is that that turnover, the frequency of that turnover, you don't know how long somebody's going to be there. A lot of people have gone to a place to work thinking they're going to be there 3 to 5 years, and they've been there 20. And so that has happened in a lot of situations. And they're definitely not going to stay if they don't feel like they're part of the team, and they're not going to stay if they don't feel like they've gotten the right information. So all we're doing is really helping them make an easy decision to move on. Or the team members have limited training resources. And so maybe you don't have money for training. Let's call it the way it is. Most organizations are tight on training. If money gets tight, training budget goes out the window, but you can train your people with different pieces. You can train them with videos like this and be able to help them get their skills up and going, or you yourself can pass those skills along to the people in those areas. Also, feedback methods for poor performance in a virtual team. So let's talk about it. So there are those times where there's poor performance. So what can you do? So created a little graphic for you just to kind of point out some of this. And so here's Hank. And so the email. So if we're looking at email, I'm not really wanting to deal with him with an email in his situation to confront him about performance, but I do want to confront him in a face-to-face manner. And it could be virtually, and we'll talk about some of that too a little bit later, but it could be virtually, but I do want to confront him face-to-face. Now, Martha, the things she's struggling with, I feel like I could sometimes confront her a little bit in email to challenge her a little bit, and it would be very appropriate. I feel like sometimes I could do it face-to-face, but always immediately, because I want to be able to get her turned around as fast as possible. And then Frank, one-on-one, I always confront him one-on-one, and with the entire team, I would never do it with the entire team. And so it allows us to be able to think, what is the best place to be able to push back on somebody who is either performing badly or is not doing their fair share of work with in front of the rest of the team. And so all of these are options for you to be able to do that if you're the project manager or the manager trying to work with these people. So we talked about team identity a little bit, but let's go a little further here. Team identity in a virtual team is going to come from several places. You've got individual ideas and team members, and we've got various experiences. And so obviously this is what makes us good, but this could also make us bad. As long as we keep our individual ideas and our various experiences separated, then that's not going to help our team have identity. We've got to be able to pull that team identity from both of those, where we share our experiences and share our ideas with each other. Team identity focuses on how the team works together, not as individuals, but as a collection of supportive helpers. Team members bond over time with each other and high desire to work together on work efforts or projects, genuine concern over each other on the team, and the entire team celebrates the successes. Mistakes and setbacks are learning opportunities, and people work on those to try to see what they would do next. And so this is an important piece in that team identity. And so you will see teams really get close, not just on the job. I mean, they'll go bowling together, and those families will spend time together after hours. And so you'll see teams that will develop that team identity even further. Now let's talk about metrics, because a lot of times people are not real sure about what to measure. Metrics, individual and virtual teams. So measuring performance in a virtual team. When you're looking at metrics for this, you've got metrics coming from a couple of ways. So we've got individual metrics, but those individual metrics could even be broken down in a team engagement with the team, and also completed work on my side that is only assigned to me. And so you're kind of running a dual set of metrics on each individual. Some you're expecting them how to do and function in a team, and some what is it that they have to produce for themselves as their portion of work with something like this. So let's look at individual metrics for a moment. It focuses on the employee's specific role, responsibility, and job position. These metrics can be customized for each employee. And so, in other words, whatever metric you're talking about, or whatever you're wanting that worker to do, I mean, you talk about those metrics, and even if it's a verbal metric that you're giving them, you give them that verbal metric, so it's crystal clear what it is you're expecting as an output for them. From a team standpoint, or team engagement, it focuses on performance and metrics which support the team goals, team objectives. So if this person is just one piece of the cog of the team, and so they have to be supportive of that. So it includes a willingness to communicate to others and assist them on team initiatives without being asked, and overall support of the team. So this is not a person who's in the team, but they're over here griping and complaining and belly aching about everything about the team. They're part of the team. That team engagement means that they're part of it. They're engaged in it. And then on this aspect of completed work, we can measure completed work. Distant workers must have personal motivation to complete work assignments. Obviously, they've got to be able to have an output to justify them being part of employment. So measuring completed work assignments is a good metric to understand if a virtual team member is performing. What is going to be their output? What is going to be their piece of the completion? And so that gives you an opportunity to be able to measure it as a project manager, or even as a manager with those people. Now, one of the things that will help you, because a lot of times if you are a project manager or a manager, you may feel distant from your people because this has been all new to you, the pandemic, and you're trying to supervise people from a distance. And so this was an interesting thing, and I like it. Individual virtual checkups. As a manager or project manager, you have the flexibility to not just attend the team meetings, obviously those are important, but to have one-on-ones with each of your people. Across the country, many project managers are doing a one-on-one with every person on the team, and they're doing it every 2 weeks. Some managers are doing a one-on-one with everyone that week. And so the one-on-one is not an hour-long meeting. Don't think of it like that. It's a 10-minute meeting. So they have a 10-minute meeting with everyone who reports to them to find out what they're working on. And even though they know what they're working on, to find out what they're working on, are they having any problems, and how can I help? That's what the manager is saying. And I thought that was a great way of doing it virtually, because, hey, it's just you and I talking. What are you working on? How can I help? Are you struggling with anything? And so every week, you're going to have a 10-minute meeting with your boss, with your supervisor. So they can have one-on-one virtual meetings with employees. Meetings could be weekly or bi-weekly, whatever makes the most sense. Content of the meeting is to discuss certain things. So I gave you a list of some of these. Work completed the previous week, work in the process of being completed, any hurdles, any problems with accomplishing it, where do they need help? And so you're asking them to help you. So you're not going to have an employee that's going to say, well, I just feel like I'm all out here by myself. They're not out there by themselves. The supervisor or the project manager or their manager is talking to them once a week or once every 2 weeks, and talking to them specifically about these things. Now, giving clarity for virtual work efforts. So I saw this and I thought this was a nice touch, and so I made a little adjustment to it. A work effort, time to implement, and who for help. Now, once again, we go back to people feel isolated and they don't know who to go to for help. And so let's just take a couple of these things. And so fixing bugs in an app. So let's assume your team is working on an app. And so the app is shutting down in the tabs, and the app must be totally rebooted, and because of this malfunction. And so the time to implement something like this, the manager maybe thinks it's 3 to 5 hours. And so Charlotte is who can help this person work on that. But this would be an assignment that you're making, and you're kind of time boxing them into 3 to 5 hours is what you think that work is going to take. If it takes longer than that, then obviously you're going to have to talk to them more and find out what went wrong. The other thing would be drafting a new report. You're time boxing them with 2 to 4 hours, and then who can they get some help from? Marty can help them in that area. And so that worker knows, okay, I can go to Marty or I can go to Charlotte for these particular pieces. And you've got an element of documentation here for holding them accountable. The other thing that you also have for how the team is going to work together is what's called a team charter. Team charter has become very popular in the PMI world in the last few years. And so it's not a project charter, it's a team charter for virtual teams, how we're going to act, what's expected of us and those type of things. So team charters are guidelines created by the virtual team on how to interact and work together. What is the team charter? It's the mission of the team, the goal, the working guidelines, and sometimes roles and responsibilities, but it's how we're going to function as a team. Project charter is something totally different. So there's also that motivation that comes by having a team charter and clear roles and responsibility. And so that motivation from this team will influence us individually, but will influence the team because we're wanting to work together. We're wanting to be able to achieve these goals. Now, types of motivation that come about from some of this would be extrinsic. External motivation influences, a teacher might reward a student, or our workers might thank other people for helping them and encouraging them. And so you will see some extrinsic motivation happen between team members. Identified external motivation based on feeling the need to act. Such as stop smoking or whatever the case may be. And so you identify that there's that external motivation to help people get through something. And so something that might be bad for them. And then intrinsic motivation could be internal and positive motivation, which is subjective and customized specifically to that person, such as aligning with their personal values. And so you know that this is going to help motivate them because this is how their makeup is. And then introjected is internal type of negative motivation, feeling guilty over low quality product that they have produced, or not hitting the deadline and the team letting the team down. And so this is very common in a virtual team as well as a normal team, is introjection, because people feel bad that they missed the due date and hurt the team or the team productivity. So as we look at motivation, though, individual motivation in the virtual team, you see the roles and responsibilities and feeding in. You got your culture and situations, but notice you've got your motivation feeding in and the skill set of that person, and it all feeds over to individual performance and results. And you can have individual performance and results in a virtual setting. It's just a matter of breaking apart what is their portion of work that they need to do. Now, the team motivation and the virtual team is usually what we look at the most. So here's a couple of ideas for you. Look for medium-sized processes that could be improved in our team. Select something which has waiting time or needless delays that we can streamline a little bit in our team. Discuss with management the goal and desired outcomes in using process improvement, because that team is working those processes and looking at those processes. They can improve those processes and reduce some of that timing. Redesign the process and look for any hindrances with the new process. If we're putting a new process in, where is this going to give us some trouble? Because there's usually a glitch, a little bit of a glitch maybe in the new process. And then move the new process into the mainstream for trial time, and then make it permanent. And the trial time allows people to look at it like a draft. It allows us to be able to adjust it a little bit so that it can continue to be even more efficient than what it is right now. So if you took a look at team motivation in virtual teams, so you've got its combined efforts of all of the people going into this, team harmony, you got motivation, you got clear goals, and then you've got your team performance and results. And so what happens is we can actually measure how productive is that team. And that team is going to be significantly more productive because they're pulling together and they're working together and they're helping train and equip each other. Now, in addition to all that we're talking about, we should be continuing to move in the direction of continuous improvement. Now, if you've looked at PMBOK 7, then one of the things that has come out is that they're really driving continuous improvement. The new PMP changes to the PMP test, they're driving continuous improvement like crazy. And so you're trying to drive continuous improvement cultures in your teams, whether even in your virtual team. So what is culture? Culture is the internal personality of the organization or team, what is allowed, how people respond, act, or joke about a situation. That is the culture of what we have. Now, your organization can influence it, obviously, because if it's a formal organization, they can do that. You also create a continuous improvement culture, frees the team members to point out any type of gaps in the process for adjustments. Continuous improvement improvement means that we can get better. We can run things better. We can make that process better. We can make our team better. We can do all of these things. We can have a better output. We can make the customer happier. So a continuous improvement culture does not fight anyone for bringing up suggestions and ideas for change. They look at them through those eyes of how can we be better in this situation. So where do you begin with this? Well, a couple of things that you might consider with your virtual teams, and I know you're already good with them, you're already working with them. Create a team charter so that the team has their goals and their responsibilities, and they have some guidelines there. And so if you don't know anything about team charters, look up team charter. You can go to PMI and look up their information on team charter, and that will help you. Institute team processes for solving problems. Here are the steps we're going to use to solve a problem or to get to a root cause analysis on a problem. Establish protocols when there's no agreements. Start creating metrics for the virtual team. These are the metrics we're measuring so that we know that the team is productive. And then you launch health checkups with the team members, one-on-one health checkups, virtual checkups like we were talking about, as well as with the team to see how we can be better. And so those health checkups are not there to play the role of I gotcha. They're there for the purpose of being able to do just that, make that checkup better for them and to be able to help them as they move through the processes and get more comfortable with being able to solve problems at a faster rate. Now, we're down to the end of our time here, so let me talk about next month. Next month, we're going to be talking about lean in project management. So in January of 2022, we're going to be going into understanding a little bit about how lean can influence project management and how we can use that in project management to be able to make project management better, to reduce waste and all of those type of things. So if this is something you'd benefit from, you can go to the website or go to this link right here and sign up for that. You have to sign up for every webinar individually. And so that way you can attend whatever you want and you're not automatically just on something that's coming to you. The other thing that I talked to you about this today that I want to mention to you, it's called a mastermind group. So if you have someone who is wanting to pick up their PMP, this is 5 days. And so it's an hour a day and they have the flexibility with those 5 hours. And so the mastermind group it's not a boot camp. It's a group that comes together for the purpose of allowing them to have some pre-learning activities. They start filling out their application. They start understanding a little bit about what's going to be entailed in taking the PMP test. They'll see videos. I've got several videos for them to watch on different aspects of the PMP. They take some practice questions so they can kind of get an idea of how hard some of the test questions are. And so they kind of go through different things. But anyway, it's 5 hours and they can do it anytime they want in those 5 hours. They can pick up 5 contact hours for doing that and a certificate for going through that. Plus they're registered to be a potential winner as someone who wins the free boot camp to be able to attend. So this mastermind group, we've done 2, and the response has just been awesome from people. And so if you have people who are needing to go through this, now here's the benefits that we've seen. There's videos, we give them a memory chart, we give them a practice PMP test. Now it's very small, it's it's not a full-blown PMP test, but we give them some of those practice questions. We give them direction on filling out the applications. We talk to them about how to get through an audit if that happens, the content objectives of what the new PMP test has. We do 2 Zoom calls so people can jump on that night and they can ask any question they want about anything with the PMP. And then they're automatically registered to be part of a potential winner of the free PMP scholarship to be able to attend a boot camp for free. So these are some of the things that we have for this group. Now we have our next PMP mastermind group. If you've got someone you think would benefit from this, January 24 through 28. And so we've got several of them scheduled next year. You can look at those on our website, but the next one is January. And so to get somebody in, they just need to register and then they'll get all signed up. Kim will send them an email and get them all signed up so that they'll know what's going on and they'll get emails from me. And then I'll be on 2 Zoom calls during the actual week with them so that it'll answer some of their questions. So let me stop right here. Let me turn our recorder off and let me answer some questions.